I'm Rod Grams, and welcome to the February edition of Washington Report. Now, after a year in the Senate, my freshman colleagues and I decided that it was time for a reality check, and that is time to get outside of the Beltway, back to the people who sent us to Washington. So, in mid-January, we embarked on a tour across 7 states in 4 days, bringing our message of promises made, promises kept directly to the people. And more importantly, we wanted the opportunity to take their message back with us to Washington. Well, my guest today is Senator Rick Santorum of Pennsylvania. He is a familiar face to many Minnesotans. He visited our state during last month's tour, and of course he is frequently seen on the floor of the Senate fighting for congressional accountability, welfare reform, and tax relief. So, Senator, welcome very much for our Washington Report. Thanks for being here.
You bet, Rod. Good to be with you.
And when we say visiting Minnesota, you said this was your first visit to Minnesota.
First visit, yeah. It was a great trip, and I got a chance to go to the Mall of America and spend some time and money, I might add, in Minnesota, trying to help the local economy as much as I could, and it was a lot of fun.
And it wasn't the greatest welcome on Minnesota's part. Of course, I guess when you come to Minnesota, you got to expect the cold weather.
It actually wasn't that cold. I mean, if you remember, it was raining in the middle of January, which was everyone tells me very unusual. So I got a little bit of unusual Minnesota weather.
Well, that was one of the stops on our trip. But Rick, overall, what do you think was important about the trip, and what do you think we did accomplish by doing it?
Well, I think number one, it is important to go out and remind the voters that the debate has changed in Washington, D.C. That we're no longer talking about what we can do to take more money out of your pocket, what we can do to create a new government bureaucracy to intrude in your lives, your family's life. But in fact, how we're going to change the tax code to make it more family friendly, to do what you've been pushing probably harder than any other member in the House or Senate, to give families a tax break, the $500 tax credit, to reform the welfare system, to save programs like Medicaid and Medicare, and do responsible budgeting. That we really have changed the focus of it's not whether we're going to balance the budget anymore. Everybody agrees we need to balance the budget, but remember, 2 years ago, no one was even talking about balancing the budget. So we have done a lot, and I think we should be proud of that.
And I think the message, too, has been kind of mixed out there, or at least clouded by those who have opposed some of these reforms. And they basically talk like we're trying to eliminate these programs and to end the services and supports that we think are so important. But basically, we're just trying to reform so we can provide as good or better services under these programs, as you said, to save Medicare and Medicaid, but also do it with less expense to the taxpayer. In other words, we've got to give a better product at a lower cost.
Right. I haven't talked to one senior, and we've got a lot of them in Pennsylvania. I haven't talked to one senior who doesn't have a horror story to tell me about Medicare, where they got overcharged for something, or they got billed for something that they didn't even use, or whatever the case may be, or that that the benefits weren't as good as they thought they were, and the whole 9 yards. And what we're trying to do is give seniors more choices, more benefit options, more delivery system options, and at the same time try to preserve that system for the long term. I don't know of any senior who doesn't want their children and grandchildren to have the same security or safety net that they have with health care. So, I mean, we're trying to improve the system, make it more efficient, but at the same time make sure that it's there for future generations.
Now, we made the trip and we called it Promises Made, Promises Kept. And some people might argue that we haven't been able to keep our word on a lot of programs, but we have, and it's been really some of the objections from the liberal leadership of the Congress and also President Clinton in vetoing some of these bills.
Sure.
But basically, we have done the job that we said that we were sent here to do, and that is to work for reforms and lower the cost of government, reform and streamline and give tax relief. So do you think that the message got through on our trip? I think that was the main reason we wanted to get out there and talk firsthand, not be filtered through the media.
Yeah, I think we were very successful. I mean, the response that I got from not just the people who attended our events in Pennsylvania when we went there, but from the news reports were very, very positive. I think we were able to articulate how we've changed Washington, and there is no question that the 1994 election was about changing Washington. And what we're up against now is really someone who's trying to defend the status quo. We have a bunch of congressmen and senators here who like having the power to Washington. It gives them more ability to make decisions and to wield that power. That to me is not what we should be all about. We should be about solving problems. We should be about giving people opportunity and giving families the chance to stay together and to raise children in a healthy community and a healthy environment. So we're doing all those things, and it's just we needed to go out and say that, and I think it was important that we did it.
And when you say provide opportunity, that's a lot different than really stepping on the backs of people and holding them under, say, these federal regulations or programs that sound in some aspects to be the safety net that people need, but at the same time, and I've heard you say that it's become a fisherman's net where it catches people and holds them in these programs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at what millions of people from all over the world come to America for, they don't come here for our welfare system. They don't come here for our Medicare system or our Medicaid system. They come here for opportunity because they know that America is a place that if you work hard, that if you play by the rules and obey the laws, that you can succeed here and you can have a better life for you and for your family and for the next generation of Grahams or Santorums. That's the beauty of America, and we need to keep remembering that America isn't about guaranteeing anybody success or guaranteeing anybody a fixed income or guaranteeing anybody a set life. It's guaranteeing people equal opportunity to live your dreams. And the more you guarantee people by taking from others some income or whatever the case may be, which is what people have done with the welfare system, the more you take away the initiative and drive to provide for themselves. And what we're trying to do with welfare and with, frankly, a lot of other programs in Washington is to reward people who work hard and play by the rules, and create that opportunity society that those at the bottom of the economic ladder can climb back up again and be successful in America.
Talking about the consensus that we heard, I think we did hear a lot of consensus, and that was from the Democratic mayor of Philadelphia when we stopped there, to the town meeting that we had in Minnesota. There might be some differences in approach, but a lot of them believe that, you know, the federal government does have some responsibility.
Absolutely.
But it's the size and the scope of this federal government that has really come into question.
Yeah, it's amazing because you hear so much about some people term it the Republican Revolution. I don't like to use that term because, you know, I'll be honest with you, this is really not quite a revolution. I mean, to be honest with you, what we're doing here is trying to just get this ever-growing monster on a little bit of a diet. You know, I always remind people these dramatic cuts that we're talking about. You know, Medicare is still going to grow at over 7, almost 8% a year under our proposal, which is still almost over 3 times the rate of inflation. The government is going to continue to grow. It's going to grow over 3% a year, which is again higher than the rate of inflation. So these programs are not going to be slashed or cut, but what we're going to do is we're going to take programs that are growing too fast and have them grow, but just not as fast, and reorder priorities. I mean, yes, there are programs who do not work and that have proven to be failures in social engineering in many cases. And so what we're going to say is we're going to quit throwing good money after bad, and we're going to take that money and give it back to the American family with a $500 tax credit. We're going to balance the budget, and we're going to provide, again, that opportunity that people are looking for in America.
And I think what gets distorted out there is a lot of the rhetoric, and I'm going to go right into the face of the president with this because he is one of the biggest abusers of this by saying that we are cutting and gutting things like Medicare.
Yeah.
But yet when he was proposing Medicare reform, he was saying we have to limit the growth, and Mrs. Clinton even testified before committees here on the Hill that said between 6 and 7%.
That's right.
And as you indicated, we're going even over 7%, so we're even allowing it to grow faster than the president himself said that we needed to do. Yet he uses that rhetoric on the stage in his news conferences, and what that has done, it's thrown fear into people. Not rational debate on the issues, but fear tactics, and again for political purposes.
Yeah,
and it's hard to battle.
One of the things that I have been very vocal about is that this debate has gotten off of the facts, and we've gotten into this whole idea of just scaring people. I mean, we're not scaring 25-year-olds coming out of college. We're scaring 81-year-olds in nursing homes and saying, you know, they're going to take your Medicare away. They're going to take your Medicaid away, which is absolutely absurd. As we both stated, Medicare is going to continue to grow. In fact, the difference between the president's growth in Medicare over the next 7 years and our growth in Medicare is about 0.2% a year. And you know, you also heard comments
in his latest budget.
In his latest budget, right? And we get criticized for increasing premiums on seniors. You're going to increase Medicare premiums. Well, the difference between what the president wants to do on Medicare premiums, his are going to increase too. They have to increase. The program costs are increasing, and seniors pick up a percentage of that cost, and as the program increases, obviously, you're going to pay a little bit more. But still, you're only going to pay anywhere from 25 to 31% of the cost of this program, and the taxpayer, general revenues, are going to pick up the other 68.5 or more percent. So, the difference between what the president wants to do on premium increases and what we want to do. By the 7th year, the first year, it's less than $1 difference a month. By the 7th year, I think it goes to about $6 or $7 a month. But again, you're not talking about throwing people off Medicare. What you're saying is that seniors should share some of the burden of the cost of a Medicare Part B program. And I haven't run into any seniors, to be honest with you, who've said that they can't pick up 31.5% of this program while the taxpayer picks up 68.5%. And remember, Medicare Part B is not a program that you pay taxes into. Right. It's different than the Part A program. It's a voluntary insurance program where the senior picks up 31.5, and the general fund taxpayer, the guy who goes out and works, picks up the other part. And we think that's a fair balance. Remember, when it was first passed back in 1965, it was 50-50. Right. Now it's 68.5, 31.5. We think that's a pretty fair split.
Yeah, and this isn't a mandatory program. This is optional.
No, it's voluntary. Nobody has to participate in Medicare Part B. Almost everybody does.
Right, because it's such a great deal.
It's a great deal. I mean, you're only paying 31.5% for every dollar. 31 cents for every dollar of benefits you're getting. That's a great deal. You can't buy insurance. No insurance company would stay in business if they're only charging 31 cents for every dollar they pay out in benefits. We want to continue at 31.5%. What the president wants to do is cut it down to 25%. At the time where the programs continue to grow and costs are continue to grow, and that means that taxpayers are going to have to pay more, or we're going to have to borrow a lot more money. And we think that this whole idea that we're driving up costs to seniors is ridiculous. What we're saying is, and what every senior I've talked to have explained this to have said, look, that's fair. I mean, it's more than fair. Yep. That we pay this percent, and hopefully we can get that message across.
And again, when you get a chance to sit down one-on-one and talk to them, and don't listen to the rhetoric that comes out, and then put that in perspective with the money that really comes from their children and their grandchildren to pay this. Again, they don't want to put their children in debt, because the only way the government has been able to do this is through borrowed money.
Absolutely. I mean, there's three things on Medicare. There's three basic areas where the president and the Republicans have disagreed right now. One is on keeping the 31.5% level, which is what it was last year. The president wants to drop it to 25. The second is means testing Medicare Part B. I mean, Ross Perot can get Medicare Part B and have it subsidized 31.5% and 68.5% by, a 22-year-old family in Bloomington who's raising 3 kids without health insurance. A lot of folks don't think that's necessarily fair. So what we've done, it's starting at $70,000 per couple, is we begin to say if you're making that much, over that amount, you're going to have to pay a little bit more than the $46.10 that you paid last year. I don't know what the number is yet this year, but we're saying we're going to pay a little bit more, and we're going to phase up the amount that you pay for Medicare Part B depending on your income. Again, remember, this is a voluntary program, and so again, when I talk to seniors and I say, when you're making $200,000 a year, you're going to have to pay 75% of the cost of Medicare, still being subsidized by the taxpayers 25%. And I don't know of any senior who thinks that's a bad idea, but the president won't do that. He won't means test the program, and so that's another structural difference. The third one is that for Medicare Part A, which is the mandatory program that you pay your taxes into, we want to give you more options. We want to give you not just fee-for-service and managed care, we want to give you medical savings accounts. The president objects to giving you more choices when it comes to how you want your health care delivered. Those are the three stumbling blocks right now, and those are the three major differences between what the president wants to do and what we want to do.
Rick, what do you think was the thing people talked more about when we said we wanted to go out and give our message, but at the same time we wanted to hear from them on what they wanted us to bring back to Washington? I think most stops we heard about the same type of information.
Yeah, I was hearing one thing consistently is you're not getting your message out.
Right.
I heard that over and over again, that why aren't we hearing these explanations?
After we had a chance to talk with them, they say, well, that's not what we're hearing.
That's not what we're hearing.
Yes.
And you're not getting your message out, and you got to get your message out. And we said, well, that's why we're doing this tour, to try to get our message out. And the other thing I guess I was hearing is, stick to your guns. We want you to change Washington. We don't like all this government shutdown, and because it's sort of messy and it makes it look like you're not doing your job. But the fact of the matter is, we have to use the tools that are available to us to get this job done. And whether we liked it or not, that was the only tool we had available to force the president to the bargaining table. Unfortunately, he moved a little bit, but not too much when it came to balancing this budget. And so I suspect, it in a sense was a failed strategy, but it was the only strategy we had. Mm-hmm. And so that was a frustrating thing, and I did hear some feedback on that. But by and large, people said, stick to your guns. We want you to balance the budget. We want you to downsize Washington. We want you to make it more efficient, and we want tax breaks. And hopefully we'll be able to get those things done.
All right, we're going to take a break, and we'll be back and talk more with Senator Rick Santorum of Pennsylvania, our special guest today, right after this.
Vince, that new dummy cam is great.
Yeah, it'll sure give people a whole new outlook on what it's like when you don't wear a safety belt.
I think they'll get the picture.
You could learn a lot from a dummy. Buckle your safety belt.
He protects all living things in the forest. But he can't do it alone. Please don't play with matches. Put out your campfires. And never, ever forget the words of Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent forest fires.
And again, welcome back to our Washington Report. Our special guest this month is Senator Rick Santorum of Pennsylvania. Rick, again, thanks very much for being with us.
You bet.
And for many Minnesotans, they probably remember the term Gang of Seven in Congress that began in 1990. And of course, Rick was a member of that freshman class of 1990 and one of the movers and shakers and one of the Gang of Seven, who really began a lot of the talk about the reform that Congress needs. And Rick was a major author of the welfare reform package as one issue in the House, and of course he's brought that with to the Senate. He's been one of the leaders in putting together a welfare reform package, one that we've debated on the floor, and again, one that the President, by the way, vetoed, as we all know. So what about the current, the welfare reform package? Where does it stand right now? We passed it overwhelmingly in the Senate, 87 to 12. Although there's talk now that it couldn't survive a veto override. So there's a lot of politics now being played.
It's unfortunate because the President the other night at the State of the Union said that he wanted a welfare reform bill that, number one, required work, number two, that put time limits on people on welfare, and number three, provided more money for daycare, because if you're going to have moms work while on welfare, we're going to need more money for daycare. The bill he just vetoed did all three of those things. In fact, we provided over $2 billion more money for daycare, realizing the need that was going to be there. So you have the president out there saying he wants to do something, and in fact he'd sign this, and then at the same time we do it and put it on his desk, he vetoes it. Right now I can't give you any real clear vision as to where we're going, other than the fact that we think we put a good bill on his desk. We think that we provided work requirements, which is just absolutely essential if you're going to get people off welfare, that you have to get them into the workplace where they're going to learn skills, where they're going to learn the value of getting up in the morning, getting your kids off to school or into daycare, and providing for your family. That's the only way to economic success in America. You can't do it sitting around watching television shows. You do it getting up and making it happen. And we think it's very important to have a work requirement there. And we also think it's important that we have a time limit. It's important that people know that welfare is not a system where you're going to stay on it for the rest of your life. That I don't know of anybody who's, when you just say the word welfare, that you feel good about it. I think, boy, there's a program that works. Or, boy, there's a dynamic system that really goes in there and helps the poor and turns their life around. But that's really what this system should be. I mean, it really should be a system that does reach that ladder back down and give people the opportunity to climb up. And in a sense, sometimes people need a little kick in the rear to get themselves going again, as many people know. And so it is important to have incentives, but it's also important to have limits and sanctions and bells and whistles to get people who may be going through some tough times in their life the ability to get up and start going again. That's what this program does. We invest resources in helping people find those jobs and keep those jobs with daycare and other resources. We say after 5 years on this system, you're on your own. This is a turnaround system. This is a system where you go in there and we train you and we educate you and we give you the opportunity, but at some point you have to start helping yourself. And by allowing people to sort of stay on the system forever and ever, we're not helping people, we're not helping children when they're raised in households of moms and dads who don't go to work. We, in fact, overwhelming evidence that children of single moms who don't work, do poor in school, are more likely to have children out of wedlock, are more likely to be on welfare themselves, and that's not helping children.
That's what we call beginning the cycle of dependency.
That's right, that's right.
Now, we could put this in dollar forms, and I mean, $5 trillion is a lot of money to even try comprehend. It's hard to even to fathom how much money, but that's what we've spent, over $5 trillion since the Great Society began 30 years ago.
That's right.
And just as you've said here, though, we have a greater percentage of our population now under the poverty line, so it really hasn't helped. It has been more of a hindrance in many respects. So what is the cure? And I think you've outlined a lot of that, and that is personal incentives.
Yeah.
You've got to have that in these bills.
Yeah, it's amazing because if you look at the poor neighborhoods, they're certainly no safer now. The educational opportunities are no better now. In fact, they're worse. Every aspect of the life of the poor in this country is more threatening and more dangerous for children. And what we're trying to do is say, look, the government taking responsibility from you to provide for you is not the answer. That we really need to talk about, mothers and fathers taking care of their children, of talking about marriage, and actually fathers and mothers marrying to raise children, not casual relationships anymore, but really saying to fathers that they have a responsibility to help their children. And we've had some very tough, in the bill the President vetoed, very tough paternity establishments, so we can find out who these fathers are. And in most cases, moms who say they don't know who the father are either know who the dad is and still have a continued relationship with, or know who the dad is and have some idea where to find him. It's important to find that father, to send a message to men in our society that fathering children is not a status thing in the community, but a responsibility to that child. And so that's a very important part, paternity, and also child support enforcement. We much tougher and with much more federal teeth to find deadbeat moms and dads who aren't paying child support, to get out there and get after them and do that. So there were a lot of provisions in this bill that really did say responsibility is important. Raising children is something that we need two parents to do in our society, and we need to have a system that enforces that, not condone or in fact even encourage. I mean, moms are better off. I mean, they make an economic decision. If you have a father who's a teenager or who's not working, moms make a decision in many cases saying, well, I'm not going to identify the father because if I do, I have to chase him around to get to get child support, which I know I won't be able to get, or I'll work out a deal where I can get some money under the table from him, even though it's intermittent, it's a little bit, and I'll just apply for aid. And so they make the decision to apply for aid, but it starts, here's the cycle broken down, here's the family broken down, and it's because it's easier and economically maybe even better in the short term, not in the long term, but in the short term to get that government aid, not the responsible father's involvement.
Another big question of debate has been block grants, letting the state take some more of the responsibility or opportunity to better handle these programs. Met with big resistance from many in Congress. Again, an avenue, though, of bringing accountability to the system.
You and I have talked about this, and we worked on the floor. We don't believe that necessarily that a federal bureaucrat is any worse or better than a state bureaucrat in solving problems. But we do believe that problems of poverty in particular are best solved at the local level. The best way to get them solved at a local level is to begin to push them back to the states and localities and then back into the communities and use what works. We know what works. We know anti-poverty programs work best if they're community-based, if they're church-based, if they're working in the community where people know each other and have a responsibility and feel for that community. And so we know poverty is a national problem, but we know the solution is not a national solution, it's a local solution. And so what we attempt to do with these block grants is give the states, and we give a lot more flexibility than under current law to states, to take this money and to use it on the programs that are in these communities now, that are working now, that are getting people off the street and getting them back into productive environments, that are helping women, get the education they need so they can go out and get jobs and raise their children, that are telling fathers that they have to be responsible for their children and putting some values back into the family. Those are the kinds of programs that we know work. Some of them are spiritually and faith-based, but we're a country that I think wants to look at what works, and we know that it takes a variety of different avenues and methods to be able to reach different people, and we should be receptive to those local community efforts that are out there doing the job on the front line, not a big government bureaucrat who's processing paper and processing people in a state welfare office.
Well, I think most will agree that the current system doesn't work and we need reform. We're going to take another break. We'll be back in just a moment.
Your approach is looking good, Cobra.
The men and women in the National Guard and Reserve face some tough challenges when they serve. Challenges that teach them discipline, leadership, and technical skills that make them better employees. So when they need time off to serve, don't make their toughest challenge approaching you.
My hero? Isaiah Thomas. Kevin Costner. Mr. Wong.
These are teachers, but to the kids they've reached, they're heroes.
My hero? Mrs. Wooten. If I don't get through to that child, who knows, maybe no one else will.
Teachers have the power to wake up young minds, to be heroes, to make a difference. Reach for that power. Teach. Find out how by calling 1-800-45-TEACH. Be a teacher. Be a hero.
And thanks again for joining us on our Washington Report. Our special guest, Senator Rick Santorum of Pennsylvania. Again, Rick, thanks for being with us. And we only have about 45 seconds left to wrap this up. But basically, I think one of the biggest, hottest debated issues has been the balanced budget. 2002, we wanted to do this to save our kids and their future. We haven't had the support from the president.
Yeah, again, here's the president who talks like he's for a balanced budget, but he's had a chance to sign a balanced budget. He's had a chance to participate in the balanced budget negotiations, and in both cases, he's really he vetoed one, and he frankly put a halt to the other by not compromising at the table. And you can say it, but you got to do it.
Right. He made it an issue and said that he wanted to campaign on that in '92. Republicans, we thought that was the mandate in 1994. He wants to take it back to the voters in '96. I think it's something that we've got to settle on, and if it takes the '96 elections, but I'm confident it's going to go in that direction. Again, Rick, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next month.